You are listening to 101.5 KOCI-FM, Newport Beach, Costa Mesa. Good morning, Orange County. This is Troy Davis, your host, and I'm bringing you a new episode of the Money Matters program, where we attempt to take a look at what's going on here in Orange County, sometimes a little local information, statewide, sometimes nationwide, and even looking at it internationally. So we wanted to touch base this morning with one of our repeat guests who has just an incredible handle on what is happening here in Orange County with this really wonderful position that he has here, and that is Orange County Board of Supervisors Chairman John Moorlach. We've got him on the phone this morning. He has just recently been appointed chairman of the Orange County Board of Supervisors, which is a position he held once before, back in 2008. So, John, welcome back to KOCI and the Money Matters program.
Thank you, Troy. Good to be back.
Well, it's nice to have you. I know you're very familiar with being on the Board of Supervisors and certainly had a stint as chairman once before, back in 2008. And part of becoming the chair is that you once again put together what is kind of called a State of the County address, which you gave very recently. So that is what I want to concentrate on today, get your take on that. And I guess my first question to you would be, since you were chair in 2008 and now again 2012, what do you see as being your big differences between the two?
I guess the concerns that I wanted to raise in my State of the County were that when you compare Orange County to the other 57 counties, where do we rank? And then two, if you look at what's on the horizon, since we're running a $5.5 billion battleship, what kind of torpedoes are underneath the water level that are coming at us that could jeopardize the county's fiscal situation? And the biggest torpedo, perhaps the largest, is the ever-increasing costs of our pension liabilities. And then I try to provide some opportunities to address that liability. And I just try to lay it all out, Troy, just be honest. You know, I think the big issue lately is two things. One, would someone please tell us the truth? And then two, since we don't see a fuel gauge of how counties and cities are doing, could you tell us where we are? And so what I try to communicate is that we're getting close to zero or empty.
Well, when you start from a point of, like you said, honesty, and start from a point of reality, I think that's where you can start building your foundation on moving forward. Because if there's, like you said before, and we'll get to a little bit later today, when you talk about unfunded liabilities and the fact that they're not on net sheets, how on earth can you move forward when you've got, $4.1 billion that's not on a net sheet? that certainly should be, because that is a real concern and it's a liability. So you have to look at those things. And moving forward on this thing, when we talk about revenues versus the underwater missiles that you're talking about, I mean, you can only do so much about income, revenues, and that sort of thing. So let's speak to that first. I think we've got property taxes, by and large, the largest revenue source in Orange County and most counties, actually. And that's holding stable, but we all know what's happened to our real estate market. Where do you see our revenues from property taxes today?
Well, as you mentioned, in 2004, the governor at the time said, hey, I need to pay off the deficit that I inherited from Governor Davis. Mm-hmm. So Arnold floated Prop 57, and in order to securitize the debt, he said, I need sales tax revenues, so I'll trade you sales tax for property tax revenue. And at the time, in 2004, as you can recall, the real estate prices were just flying up like a rocket ship. So we thought that was a pretty good trade.
Right.
Now it's not. And the county's general purpose revenue now comprises about 86, almost 87% property tax revenue. So we're totally dependent on the real estate market. And the real estate market has been declining in the late 2000 first decade and maybe has leveled out, but I don't see real estate revenues going up dramatically in the next few years at all.
Yeah, I don't either. I mean, as you know, I'm a realtor here in Orange County, have been since '85, and I get to play that game every single day. And you're right, back in 02, 03, 04, it was, hey, hello, free money, let's go, let's buy stuff. And we didn't give much thought to 10 years from then or 7 years from then, which we are sitting now. And I don't think, and you may be able to correct me on this, but I don't believe that all properties are going up by the mandated 2% per year maximum. I mean, we're just not seeing that. So is that part of the revenue stream that is not, perhaps that was anticipated, it is not there now?
Correct. You're absolutely right. Real estate property assessed values can only go up by a maximum of 2% per year. And if the rate of inflation or the consumer price index is less than 2%, then the county has to use the lower number. And a year and a half ago, we actually had to use a negative number because in the CPI, the consumer price index, actually went down as opposed to up. So that required a lot of programming changes for the assessor's office. So even at a 2% increase per year, that won't keep up with the amount of increases for the pension system.
Yeah, and I've actually I'm fortunate enough to have a piece of property out in the Palm Desert area, and the county of Riverside, I believe it was a year and a half ago, actually sent out forms saying, we have voluntarily reduced your property taxes. Don't bother going through this whole process of applying for it. They just did it automatically, and I imagine that puts quite a little dent in their revenues, certainly in the Riverside County, where they've got other communities that are not doing well at all.
Yeah, and that means that you bought the property recently.
Let's not talk about that part.
Sorry, Troy. So some of us that bought over 10 years ago, we wouldn't get a notice like that.
Right.
But those that purchased in recent years would, and the assessor should unilaterally be doing that kind of activity. They should be saying, your value has declined below the purchase price. We will unilaterally reduce it there, and then therefore hopefully prevent you from having to file an appeal to lower it to where you think it should be. And that's just a proactive move that assessors should be making. And yeah, it's had a real impact. In fact, statewide, the assessed values for properties in the state has gone down in 2010 and 2011, when they're kind of used to seeing them go up by rates of between 5 and 12%. We've been going down by more than 2% in 10 and just about 2% in 11. Fortunately, Orange County in 11 actually went up about 0.087, exactly. A little less than 1%. Mm-hmm. But we're sort of a different story than other counties, and that's what makes it such a wonderful place to be and to live in.
Yeah, and I think that indeed may help us come out of this perhaps ahead of some other locations, is just the desirability of where we are, physicality. And the California Association of Realtors says that we're looking forward to a 2% increase this year and another 2% next year. I've had people on my program say, yeah, good luck with that. And some say, well, we should get at least that. So nobody knows. We're all crystal balling this thing to the best we can. But I would say that from your seat, John, you can't crystal ball it. I mean, you've got to get hard facts and numbers, and I appreciate what you're doing in that office to do that. But
also, Troy points out how critical the real estate market is to the county of Orange. So you need a good market. You need hopefully a good product, new development, increased values because you're having increased employment, and we're attracting more jobs, which then creates more demand, which is how we're going to generate a better tax base. On the flip side, you really need a good, healthy county government. If you have a government that's floundering or having a difficult time, it will have a bearing on real estate values in either the city that's having a tough time, for example, Vallejo in the Bay Area, which real estate prices have had a tremendous negative impact because of what's happening with that city. So it's really critical that we work together to make sure, one, we have a strong government, and two, strong real estate. We're kind of hand in hand.
Well, no question about it. Real estate is, I think, the foundation of all, because then you're talking about jobs, as you mentioned, et cetera. And And what a lot of people don't realize, there's a huge pent-up demand for good real estate. You would think, well, nobody wants to buy, you can't get financing. Well, that's all part of it. There are a lot of people that want to buy right now. And as you mentioned, jobs. I mean, that's bringing people back into the market. You've got interest rates at 3.5% to 4.5%. Hard to beat that. Even if they were at 2%, I don't think you're going to get many more people joining in the bandwagon of buying property. It's just the availability of credit itself. But let's switch a little bit now, too, if we would, about the deficit. I mean, Orange County is running at a deficit. Can you tell us where we are right now, John, please?
Every county or in every city has what's called a comprehensive annual financial report. And that comprehensive annual financial report is just like has a basic financial statement which provides the balance sheet, and it would show our total assets, our liabilities, and then it would have our net assets. We would call that in the private sector owner's equity or capital or retained earnings. So the county has about $7 billion in assets with about $2 billion in liabilities, which gets us to about 4.8 in net assets. Pretty good. But you break up net assets into 3 categories. The first is, what do you have invested in capital assets? Well, we can't liquidate roads and pipes underground. We can't sell that. I guess you could, but technically it's not an easily sellable liquid asset. So that represents about $3 billion of our net assets. We also have funds that do not belong to the county that are restricted for specific purposes that we cannot access. That's about $1.4 billion. And then if you look at the financial statement, we have 2 columns. One is government activities, the other is business-related activities. And we have business-related activities with John Wayne Airport and with our landfills, which are known as enterprise funds. And they provide services, but the revenues in those enterprise funds are not accessible to the county as a whole. We don't benefit from the profits that they may generate. So you pull their unrestricted net assets out of the equation, which is over $300 million, and you find that the County of Orange is actually, as of June 30, 2010, has a negative $10 million as its unrestricted net assets, which is sort of sobering.
Well, it's scary. You were looking at some analysis that some of your friends in the media were putting together and their approach to that, and you consider there's about 3 million people in Orange County, and you break that down. That means for every man, woman, and child in Orange County, if they were to give up $3 a piece, it would balance the budget. Does that make sense?
That's it. It's a per capita.
Per capita, right.
Per capita allows you then to measure how you compare to others. And so that's a good tool for comparing to cities and to counties. But what makes the financial statement a little scary is when you do that per capita, you say, okay, if we're a negative 3, and if we look at the 57 other counties and their per capitas, where would Orange County stand? You know, this great conservative county. Would it be in the top 10? No. Top 20? No. Top 30? No. Top 40? No. We'd be in 46th place of all the 58 counties in the state. So we have some work to do, and the rating agencies have been really complimentary. You know, we're working hard, doing a good job, but they also will say that our reserves are narrow.
Well, they're extremely narrow. And as we look forward to, the next analysis, I think you projected that forward. And where does that $3 negative per capita move to, John?
Well, the most recent financial statement for the county for June 30, 2011 just came out, and that per capita actually jumps up by another $22 because we have to include the loss that we had in this last fiscal year, which now our unrestricted net assets are 73 million negative. We're a deficit. So the trend, this deficit continues to grow, and that's an impact of this recession.
Well, and you mentioned the reporting agencies like Moody's and whatnot. They say things like we are showing modest gains, and but to be cautious, which that's easy to say for just about anything. I mean, I could say that about a lot of things, but when you really break it down, and you alluded to this at the very top of the program, John, and that is the unfunded liabilities we have with pension costs and health care. I think you mentioned there was $4.1 billion of unfunded liabilities on the balance sheet that really isn't accounted for. Now, is that accounted for in that $25 per capita that you just referred to, or is it not still?
No, it's not. The Government Accounting Standards Board doesn't require currently that municipalities include unfunded liabilities.
When's this going to change? This makes no sense. Why is this not being changed?
Well, it doesn't make sense. The Financial Accounting Standards Board, which oversees the private sector, which oversees the companies that you invest in at the stock market, they're required, to include those numbers. Why the Government Accounting Standards Board hasn't required it is inexcusable. And unfortunately, because this number has been in the shadows, almost impossible to get in most comprehensive annual financial reports, has allowed for a lot of this manipulation and abuse in the pension and retiree medical area. Because if it's in the shadows, that means you can play.
Right.
And unions have played. And so if we were to put the unfunded liability for our retiree medical on our balance sheet, that's another $400 million in debt. And if we put our unfunded liability to our pension plan, that's another $3.7 billion. So our deficit would be, like you said, $4.1 billion, and the per capita jumps from $3 to $1,413 per capita.
Wow, that's huge. We are speaking with the chairman of the Orange County Board of Supervisors, John Moorlach. And John, since you again mentioned at the top of the program, the biggest thing sitting in front of us is, we're all working on the revenue side of that, and there's only so much you can do on the revenue side. So then you have to look at expenditures and the things like these pension reform, and you're big on pension reform. I know your cohort Sean Nelson is also, I believe, in lockstep with trying to make something happen. But you really can't make anything happen unless everybody's at the table and understanding what's going on, and you've got so many public employees that are locked into contracts with this. You certainly can't change those. Am I correct with that?
Well, that's part of the debate that I started with the State of the County address. Mm-hmm. There is a school of thought that says, look, any benefit that you give to government employees by way of a pension plan is a personal property right. It's a vested right that cannot be revoked. It's basically only an elevator that goes up. And so the legal minds that work for governments who are also in those pension plans will tell you that you can't touch this, regardless of what kind of fiscal impact it's having on the municipality itself. Even if it's endangering the fiscal health, you're not allowed to touch it. Now, there's where you have some debate. There are state constitutions that say you can change pension benefits in a fiscal crisis. And then there are those that say, hey, the negotiating table is where you have to address these issues, and there we should be able to negotiate down and have this debate on whether or not it is a personal property right that cannot be changed. And then there's the argument, Troy, that if you file for Chapter 9 bankruptcy, a federal bankruptcy court judge could just go ahead and do it for you and change the bargaining unit agreements. So we know it can be changed. Now the issue is, how do you change it? Do you do it through litigation? Well, we tried that. Didn't seem to have the results we wanted. We've tried legislation, or we're trying. I don't think Governor Brown goes anywhere this year with that. And we've tried propositions, and no one seems to get enough signatures to get that to happen, at least on the state level. It's happened in some small jurisdictions. So let's go back to full circle and go to the negotiating table and show the numbers to the union leaders that if we try to keep a pension formula that is too expensive, will result in multiple layoffs in future years and will guarantee literally no pay raises in take-home pay, probably for the next 10 plus years, then is it really worth clinging and just holding on so tightly to that kind of unsustainable benefit? It's sort of like buying a house that you can't afford. When do you finally say, wait, we may have to foreclose if we don't let go?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if you're sitting there in an upside-down property and you owe, $800,000 on a property that's now worth $500, does it even make sense to hang on to that? And the downside of all of that, you're ruining your credit. You're paying for something you can't afford anyway. Couldn't you use that money wiser elsewhere? It's a good analogy. And John, too, I also make mention when we were talking about some of the old school pension information there, we recall that there was retroactive pension increases back in 2001. I believe they went from 2% of salary for each year of service at age 50 to 3% at age 50. And there was also in 2004, county workers were bumped from 1.62% of salary each year up to 60 to 2.7 at 55. So both, can those, I know you want to look at those real carefully, and what are you thinking about in regards to that?
Well, I think the most honorable approach, if I had a magic wand, I would say, look, guys, to the bargaining units, look, you had a great pension before we went up Silly Hill and improved public safety pensions by 50%, and you look at the math for the general members, and it was about 60% retroactive to the date of hire. That pretty much increased our unfunded liability by 1/3. We're now 67% funded. If we undid that, if we rescinded it all, even the retroactive component, at least for those that are currently working, it'd be pretty difficult to do it for those that have already retired. But leaving that off the table, you could pretty much get your unfunded liability down to a reasonable, manageable number, and all you'd have to be fighting now is what the vagaries of the market gives you.
Yeah, and John, I think you would join me in my sentiment that we are not singling out individuals and saying you don't deserve what you earn or that sort of thing. This has nothing to do with that. This is the way the system is set up, and the way that it's set up may not certainly be the best moving forward to climb out of an incredibly poor economy. And so, we're not trying to single anybody out with that, but I appreciate
you pointing that out, Troy, because, when you're the beneficiary of these benefits, you tend to personalize these discussions.
Right.
And you're right. We're not talking about, trying to make anybody look like villains or the bad guys. We're actually technocrats. I'm an accountant, and I'm also a financial planner. So all I'm doing is saying, here's the problem, and we have a solution. And it's up to you. It's in your court. But if you don't accept this solution, if the numbers keep going the way they are, then the system, the retirement system may implode. You may get a postcard in 10 years that says, we're only 40% funded. We can't pay you your full benefit. Mm-hmm. Therefore, we're going to pay you a percentage of it. And then your life will change dramatically, and you'll look back at the day that you had a chance to fix it. And that's all we're doing is we're just saying, here's the day. If we don't fix it now, then it may not be very pretty for you in your golden years.
Well, and I think one of the advantages of talking about this topic right now is that there are contract negotiations coming up with 3 of the county's most powerful bargaining units: the Orange County Employees Association, Orange County Sheriff's Deputy Sheriffs, and also the Orange County Managers Association. What is that looking like to you so far? Are there preliminary discussions going on already? Do you think it's going to be a huge battle with sticks and stones, or what do you see coming up with that, John?
Well, obviously, we don't have the resources to give you a pay increase. In fact, we're disincentivized to give you a pay increase because it increases the pension liability. Mm-hmm. So it's just going to be a time where there's going to be 2 ways to go. One is the approach that I've laid out, which says let's go back to the old formulas. The other is to say the employees should pay in even more. So instead of getting a pay increase, you're going to have a net pay decrease. You're going to see more in withholdings, so your net paycheck declines. Now, we might also see more layoffs, more cuts, as this thing keeps growing, this debt. But in the meantime, you could almost expect for the next few years no pay increases, and in fact a reduction in your paycheck. Now, you're self-employed, but when you have employees, if you really want to discourage them or you want to show them that they're not appreciated, just don't give them a raise, or better yet, cut their pay. It's a way to say you don't like them. In fact, it gives them burnout. So it could have an impact on retention, and who knows what happens. But this is just going to be one of those real soul-searching kind of years.
Yeah, it is. And one of the other issues that you face, and we all face here in Orange County and all of California actually, is that Sacramento has multiple hands in the pockets of most counties trying to take things like vehicle license fees, and that's an enormous deficit issue for the counties as that is happening. And I had Costa Mesa CEO Tom Hatch on last week, and as you know, they're going through the process of trying to become a charter city. And I had asked him, does that give you some protection from Sacramento's long reach? And he said, well, it kind of sets a standard. Perhaps we can carry a larger stick, but it may not prevent them from doing money grabbing. How do you see Sacramento's play as we move forward in 2012?
I haven't seen whether charter or general, which is the other general law approach, the two. I haven't seen that as a barrier to Sacramento stealing money from cities. Okay. What charter gives you is a little more ability to be in control of your destiny and not subject to the laws specified by Sacramento. So some of the laws in Sacramento really make it difficult to outsource. So if you charter, then you may have a better methodology for management to try to say, hey, what's the least cost for providing certain services? Should we have our own landscaping department, or should we outsource? Mm-hmm. And you can see right away that there's going to be a tremendous savings if you don't have the kind of pension and benefit costs by outsourcing. So that's a critical area that has to be looked at by just about every municipality. So does shared services, and so does regionalizing. Mm-hmm. Costa Mesa is also looking at utilizing the Orange County Fire Authority, and so is the city of Santa Ana and a few others. Where can they go where the costs are lower? And so every city, especially let's say one like Costa Mesa, which also has a pretty substantial deficit when you include the unfunded liabilities, has to look at everything in order to survive. And so the charter approach is certainly a smart move to make.
Right. John, in our last couple of minutes, give us the real rosy, beautiful pieces of the puzzle moving forward for the economy of Orange County. Where's the real bright spots?
Well, we're still blessed with a good, diversified, business base. We're not dependent on any particular industry here in Orange County. So we're blessed with that kind of diversity, and we've got some incredible businesses here, large employers that that's still a positive. We've certainly seen the Irvine Company build some housing product that has actually done quite well, which sort of confirms your observation that people still really want some good new housing in a good city or location. So that's still positive. Hopefully, our tourism continues to do well with Disneyland, with Knott's Berry Farm, with our wonderful coastline of 42 miles. I mean, we're a glorious little place, and like I said in our last interview, it's just too bad we're in California, because we have to deal with the regulations and the taxation structure of the state,
and the business unfriendly nature, right, that we're trying to overcome. Yeah. That we're known as the most unfriendly place for business, which I don't know if that still holds true, but that's a moniker we have.
Well, it just came out again in the LA Times recently.
So we're still there.
And the U-Haul index still shows that most of the growth is internal. It's not people moving in. And you really need growth to keep, a municipality moving and continuing in the direction you wanted to. If you're not growing, you're dying.
Well, John Moorlach, I know that you use Saturdays to catch up on your other business, and you chair so many different organizations and whatnot, and I know you're extremely busy, so I really want to thank you again for coming on the Money Matters program. That's Orange County Board of Supervisors Chairman John Moorlach. John, thank you again.
You're welcome, and thank you, Troy.
All right, you have a great weekend.
You too.
Okay, thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Well, that was just great. I really, really, really enjoy having John on. There's always going to be arguments both ways on how to proceed to pull Orange County and this nation out of a difficult economy, but there are bright spots all over the place, including housing, which we already discussed is one of those core elements that really needs to happen. So as we move forward in that, I'm seeing it in my own business. I see the desire to buy property. I see employment coming back. So there's a lot of positive that's happening out there. Orange County, I hope you're a part of it. You are listening to 1015 KOCI-LP-FM, Newport Beach, Costa Mesa. This has been the Money Matters program. I'm Troy Davis, your host, and the program is sponsored by my real estate firm here in Orange County called Davis Consulting Group. And if you have any questions about your own personal real estate, if you need some help with distressed property or you're looking for property, you can find me at troydavis.com. You can get both my phone number and my email address from my website. That's troydavis.com. Orange County, you have a great weekend.
Money matters, money matters. I can make some, everybody wants some. Up every penny, bills on bills. I am in the black now. Money matters, saving every penny, but the bank is in a cold sweat.